आय,
बहू, उस दिन मैंने फ्रिज में नींबू देखा। तू लेके आई थी? हाँ माँ जी, मेरे को मालूम था तू काला जादू करती है। माँ जी, वो तो मैं नींबू शरबत बनाने के लिए लेके आई थी। मेरे को तो पिलाया नहीं कभी नींबू शरबत। अभी बना क्या हूँ? नींबू शरबत पिला के काला जादू करेगी? माँ जी, बहू मैंने देखा है, मैं तेरे को कितना भी चिल्लाती है तू सुनती रहती है। आप बड़े हैं माँ जी, आप पर गुस्सा तो आता रहेगा ना देखो। नहीं माँ जी, नहीं, मन में गाली तो देती रहेगी तू पक्का। अरे नहीं नहीं, अरे ऐसा फ्रेंड बन के पूछ रही है जैसे। सच्ची बता। हाँ, मन में गाली तो आता है बहुत बार। पता था मेरे को। कल मोहित की बर्थडे है। जा जाके काम कर अपना। जी माँ जी। गाली दे रही है मन में। सॉरी, अब मैंगो शेक पीने का मन है। जी माँ जी, मैं बना के आती है। चला जाएगा। नहीं माँ जी। अरे लगी है। नहीं माँ जी। नहीं नहीं, आई अभी से ही कब्जा करेगी क्या घर पे? नहीं माँ जी, जा मैंगो शेक बना के आ मेरे लिए। नहीं माँ, हाँ बना के आती है। कितनी पढ़ी हुई है तू? मैंने एमबीए की है। हाँ, तो मेरे सर में दर्द हो रहा है सुबह से। सही बता। माँ जी, मैंने एमबीए की है, एमबीबीएस नहीं। मेरे को लग ही रहा था मैं गलत लड़की चुनी है हमारे बाबू के लिए। वो दरवाजे का लॉक टूट गया है। मेरे को नहीं आता है। बाकी क्या सिखाया है तेरी माँ ने? टीवी का प्लग पॉइंट काम नहीं कर रहा है, वो तो बनाने आता होगा ना? तो क्या सीख के आई है नन्ही घर से? अभी ये मत बोलना कि बाथरूम में टाइल्स लगाने भी नहीं आते तेरे को। कैसी बहू आ जाएगी मेरे घर पे? एक भी घर का काम नहीं आ रहा है तेरे को। पर माँ जी, जबान लड़ाती है। बस यही सिखाया है तेरी माँ ने, जबान लड़ाने का। बहू, जी माँ जी, चाय में चीनी कम डाला है। नहीं माँ जी, पता तो है मैं गलत हूँ। फिर भी नहीं मानी। नागिन है नागिन। कल मुही, नागिन है। कल मुही। बहू, उस दिन मैंने फ्रिज में नींबू देखा। तू लेके आई थी? हाँ माँ जी, मेरे को मालूम था तू काला जादू करती है। माँ जी, वो तो मैं नींबू शरबत बनाने के लिए लेके आई थी। मेरे को तो पिलाया नहीं कभी नींबू शरबत। अभी बना क्या हूँ? नींबू शरबत पिला के काला जादू करेगी? हाँ जी। बहू मैंने देखा है, मैं तेरे को कितना भी चिल्लाती है तू सुनती है। आप बड़े हैं माँ जी, हाँ पर गुस्सा तो आता रहेगा ना तेरे को। नहीं माँ जी, नहीं, मन में गाली तो देती रहेगी तू पक्का। अरे नहीं नहीं, अरे ऐसा फ्रेंड बन के पूछ रही है जैसे। सच्ची बता। हाँ, मन में गाली तो आता है बहुत बार। कल मोहित की बर्थडे है। जा जाके काम कर अपना। जी माँ जी। गाली दे रही है मन में। सॉरी, बहू मैंगो शेक पीने का मन कर रहा है। जी माँ जी, मैं बना के आती है। चला जाएगा। नहीं माँ जी, अरे लगी अभी। नहीं माँ जी। नहीं नहीं, आई अभी इधर। अभी से ही कब्जा करेगी क्या घर पे? नहीं माँ जी, जा मैंगो शेक बना के आ मेरे लिए। नहीं माँ, हाँ बना के आती है। कितनी पढ़ी हुई है तू? मैंने एमबीए की है। हाँ, तो मेरे सर में दर्द हो रहा है सुबह से। सही बता। माँ जी,
looting
मैंने
3
एमबीए
sleeping
की
age
है,
3.
एमबीबीएस नहीं। मेरे को लग ही रहा था मैं गलत लड़की चुनी है हमारे बाबू के लिए। माँ जी, वो दरवाजे का लॉक टूट गया है, बना देना। मेरे को नहीं आता है। बाकी क्या सिखाया है तेरी माँ ने? टीवी का प्लग पॉइंट काम नहीं कर रहा है, वो तो बनाने आता होगा ना? तो क्या सीख के आई है नन्ही घर से? ये मत बोलना कि बाथरूम में टाइल्स लगाने भी नहीं आते देखो। ये कैसी बहू आ जाएगी मेरे घर पे? एक भी घर का काम नहीं आ रहा है देखो। पर
Okay,
माँ
that's
जी,
the perfect
जबान
one.
लड़ाती है। बस यही सिखाया है तेरी माँ ने, जबान लड़ाने का। बहू, जी माँ जी, चाय में चीनी तो नहीं डाला है। नहीं माँ जी, जी हाँ, चीनी डालना पड़ेगा। फिर भी नहीं माने। नागिन है नागिन। कल मुही, नागिन है। कल मुही। बहू, उस दिन मैंने फ्रिज में नींबू देखा। तू लेके आई थी? हाँ माँ जी। हाँ माँ जी, काला जादू करती है। माँ जी, वो तो मैं नींबू शरबत बनाने के लिए लेके आई थी।
कुछ मिला? 1 नॉकबैक 1 एंचान। मॉर्फ Yep. The only difference is this one has a fire aspect. And that makes me feel good. Use this sword. Another red भी चाहिए. Okay, where have we reached? Load schematic. We have reached over here. Have this. Glow icon. Have Navas. I guess let's just start building. I really think we should just start building. We have most of the items, right? I don't think. Okay, where I want to make my storage is. Okay, it's a huge area. It needs to be. So what we'll do is, let's go to it. How about making an perimeter? Perimeter, make Minecraft. 7 million blocks. I created my first perimeter. Yep. I want to do the same. How to run a world eater and create a perimeter in Minecraft. Seven million blocks. You are joking, right? $3D TNT quarry. One month. Yep.
Jesus did not say
Hello YouTube, this is Trono. We're back in my Get Good world. It's been a while. Really neat. Wood, redstone, cobble, slime, honey, iron, bartering. The world needs a bit of maintenance. For example, we still have to finish setting up the fancy storage that we've built by setting the item filters. And somehow we've lost both zombies in our iron farm, so we'll have to replace those. But we are
326.
absolutely ready to tackle the large projects now. And this will be, as I said, a perimeter in the overworld. And of course, once we have the perimeter, we'll build some farms there. I'm currently thinking about gunpowder or possibly a much faster universal mob farm. Certainly a slime farm, because a swamp slime farm sucks. A squid farm, and perhaps a faster copper farm if we have a large enough area of river biome. So let's get started. So I prepared a bit by AFKing quite a lot at the slime and the witch farm. So we'll have enough slime for the world eater and the trenchers, and hopefully enough stuff to craft all of the pistons and the observers that we need. Now I have made a video in the past how to make a perimeter, but this time we'll go through this in much more detail. So let's get started. We need to invest quite a bit in this, because this is a crucial part that will save us a lot of work later. Step 3, we'll grab all of the schematics from the Slimestone Discord and resize them to whatever we need. Step 4, now that we have the schematics, we will have to craft all of the materials that we need for the schematics. Hint, hint, it will be like a shulker of pistons, a shulker of sticky pistons, a shulker of observers, and then a bit more. Step 5 will be to do the trenches, and step 6 will be to build and run the World Eater. Most of the work will actually be in step 5, the trenching, but you can save a lot of work by carefully selecting a good location in step 2. Okay, so the first step is to decide how large I want a perimeter, and there are 2 components to that decision. On one hand, of course, it's much more work to make a larger perimeter. On the other hand, we have loading to consider. One thing that you absolutely don't want to do is to unload a World Eater or unload it partially while it's running. Very bad things will happen if you do.
I think so too.
And loading is much easier in single player. And I think my video settings is from Sodio, but you will find the same option in vanilla. In single player you can just increase the simulation distance to whatever you need to load everything. But of course on a server we don't have the luxury of doing that. We cannot influence the simulation distance of a server by changing our local settings. So let's talk about loading, more precisely entity level loading, but if you're not familiar with the different types of loading, then don't worry about it. We will talk only about entity level loading today. And to talk about loading, I will use this tool here that is called MCA Selector. It's really something to copy and reset chunks, so you don't need it. But it's very good for visualizing what I want to talk about. So let's say we want to build the World Eater somewhere here. And just for the sake of the argument, let's say we're sitting in this chunk here with the lava seed. So we will park a bot here that loads the area. Or on the server you might use a secondary account or a friend of yours. So if we have a player sitting in this chunk, then the game will load chunks in the square around the player depending on the simulation distance. And the standard simulation distance of a server is 10 chunks, and that's what I'm using for this world as well. So that means the game will load 10 chunks in each direction. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in all directions. And the game will permanently load this area here, which is a 21 by 21 chunk area with the center here. So if we park an AFK player here in this chunk, then all of the highlighted area will be loaded permanently and we can run anything there, World Eater, trenches, whatever machines we need. So the way to do that is to build an AFK spot in this chunk, anywhere in this chunk, and then this 21 by 21 chunk area will be loaded. If you have access to 2 accounts, say your account and an alt account or maybe a friend, then this is probably the largest you want to make your perimeter. These 21 by 21 chunks, because that's what you can load at a time. And trust me, it's a pain in the backside to try to load more. However, if you have access to more accounts, for example, because your server allows to spawn carpet bots, then you can make the perimeter larger. Let's say we have another account sitting here, then we can go another 10 chunks out and load this additional area. So how can you figure out what your simulation distance is? Well, it's actually rather easy. All you need is a stack of junk items, like the stone here. Then you enable chunk display, F3 and G at the same time. And ideally find yourself some flat area, so this is a plains biome here. This is fine. And then you go in a straight line and drop 1 item in each chunk. Make sure that you don't pick them up again. And you do that for as long as you think your simulation distance might be, so maybe 16 chunks or something. There we go. And now all you have to do is to wait 5 minutes until the items despawn. And what will happen, so let's do a tick sprint here. What will happen is that all of the items that are in the loaded chunks will despawn, but the items that are not in the loaded chunks will still be there. Okay, sprint is done, item has despawned, and now you trace your steps back and count the chunks where you find no items. So you don't count the one that you are in. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, and so on. 3, and you walk until you find a dropped item. Okay, this is chunk 10. This is chunk 11, and in 11 we found an item. So 11 was no longer loaded. And that means our simulation distance is 10. Okay, back to the question how large we want our perimeter to be. Let's once again say we AFK here and go 10 chunks in each direction, like so. And we have a 21 by 21 perimeter, or 336 times 336 blocks. This is the maximum size what one account can load on our server. Now if we build a farm in the perimeter, then we want the AFK spot so that the despawn sphere of 128 blocks around the player is completely in the perimeter. So if we have a perimeter, and let's go to the hemisphere server for that, so my perimeter there. If you have several farms, then you want to have dedicated AFK spots. So for example, this is my slime farm, 3 slime chunks down there. This is my AFK spot for the slime farm. And if I enable mini hut and create a despawn sphere, and maybe let's make this a bit more visible. Okay, there we go. Then you see that the farm is in the despawn sphere, but not the other farm. Now this is actually a record disk farm, but I disabled this by flooding the spawn area. So the only place where mobs can spawn here is this. And you will notice that the despawn sphere is completely inside the perimeter. It's actually a close call over here. So this just scrapes the border of the perimeter. So this is the AFK spot that we want. But this AFK spot has to be 8 chunks away from each border of the perimeter. And that means we just have this area here in the middle for our AFK spot. We have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 chunks away from the borders. And this means we will have a hard time fitting more than 2 or 3 farms in there. And of course we want to do a drowned farm, a copper farm, and this one will be a bit larger. I figure that we will add a second loader and make a perimeter like this. And by using 2 loader accounts, we will still be set to a height of 336 blocks. But we can increase the width anywhere to maybe 672 blocks. We will probably not use the whole 672, maybe more like 500, which is a good value, of 550, something like that. Will also depend a bit on the spot where we build a perimeter. So the World Eater will be 336 blocks wide, and on this side as well. And here at the top and the bottom we will have just our trenchers. So our trenchers will have to go the longer distance. But this is the main information that we need. We will have a World Eater that will be at most 336 blocks wide, and we'll try to get as close to this as possible. Okay, step 1 is done. On to step 2. We need to find a good spot for the perimeter. And here's what I'm looking for. Number 1, the corners have to be dry. So a perimeter like this would absolutely suck. We can and we will trench through water, but building the trenches in water here in this corner would be a royal pain in the backside that I can live without. So dry corners. Number 2, we want the area to be reasonably flat. And now I'm using Xero's map. And the great thing about the map is if you point at an area, it will also show you the height. Here in the top, it will show you the Y value. So for example, this area here would be nice. It's flat. There we have up to 100. That's fine. That's fine as well. So not a lot of mountains there. And the reason why we want a flat area is that we'll use the Kronos trenchers that can handle terrain up to 130 blocks high. So we don't want to go any higher. The interior of the perimeter could have higher terrain, so we could have a few mountains like that in the middle of the perimeter. Jagged peaks, 150 blocks. If that's in the interior, that's fine. It will just prolong the AFK time to run the World Eater because we have to build it higher. But it won't cause any more work. But overall, flat territory is easier. So we'll try to find a rather flat area. Okay, number 3. we absolutely don't want any deep dark in the area. No mobs can spawn there, so this part of the perimeter would be wasted, at least for mob farms. And number 4, we want as few trial chambers as possible. We need to remove all of these trial spawners and vaults, because they will survive a TNT blast and are immovable, and it takes minutes to remove one of them. So let's try to limit the amount of trial chambers that we have in our perimeter. And number 5, for the same reasons, we don't want end portals. Frankly, I'm not sure what will happen if a World Eater hits an end portal, but I imagine it's nothing good. Perhaps we could remove the bedrock and end portal blocks, I'm not sure, but that's a headache I can do without. Okay. And kind of optional, number 6, I don't really want cold biomes where it could snow. It might mess with some World Eater designs, so not all World Eaters are weatherproof, but even if we use a weatherproof World Eater, snow does mess up the Light Medica when it's snowing. So let's try to go for no cold biomes. And this is editing Bruno. You probably want to avoid mangrove swamps, because mangrove swamps can have waterlogged mangrove roots, and these mangrove roots will not be blown up by TNT tubers. Something I was blissfully unaware when I started the perimeter project, and something that I'll have a lot of fun with in a couple of episodes. Now, some people will question, if you want to build a universal mob farm, should you look for a desert to build it in? Because you get less rotten flesh there. The short answer is, I wouldn't worry too much about it. The longer answer is a bit more difficult. You see, in a desert, most of the zombies are replaced by husks, and husks only spawn on blocks with sky access. So if you build, for example, a universal mob farm, it will have a roof to block out the light. So husks would not spawn in your universal mob farm. So one answer would be, if you want to build a universal mob farm and only a universal mob farm in your perimeter, and this mob farm is up against the mob cap, then a desert would indeed give a bit higher rates of maybe 10% or maybe even 15% more, because you wouldn't fill the mob cap with zombies. However, if we look at the mob distribution, and this is from the wiki, then you see that the spawn rates for all of the other mobs are pretty much the same. For example, for creepers or for slimes. So for all those farms, it doesn't really matter if you are in a desert or not. Desert only gives a slight advantage for universal mob farms. So I will not look specifically for a desert. If the perimeter happens to end up being in a desert, that will be fine. Especially since deserts are usually flat and often have less water underground. Although, as you see in this example, this might not be true at all if you have a different biome below, like dripstone caves or lush caves. Even if my perimeter ends up not being in the desert, the rates of our universal mob farm that we will build will be spectacular. So I think that's fine. Of course, if you want to farm arrows of weakness that you can get from the new parched mobs, then you will have to build your perimeter in a desert. Okay, how can we find a good location? Now, this is considerably easier if you know the seed of your world and can use Chunkbase, a web-based application. Of course, I know the seed of the world, so here we are. This is the Chunkbase app. And roughly here is our base, where the red dot is. Now, what we can do is to enable grid lines. And if we zoom in, it will show the chunks, but if we zoom out, it will show the region files. And each region is 512 by 512. So we know our perimeter will be in the height a bit less than a region and in the width a bit more. And what I've also done, I've enabled trial chambers, so you can enable all of the structures here that you want. I enabled strongholds on trial chamber, and we said we don't want these. I also show the biomes. So what I'm looking for is a bit of river biome in the interior of the perimeter, basically where we will have one AFK spot, but otherwise the area should be mostly dry. Now note, if I hover with the mouse over an area, that here in the bottom right it shows the biome. Unfortunately it does not show the height, so we can assume, for example, that forest or taiga is probably not too high. If we have jagged peaks we might have mountains, but in any case it's easy to distinguish between ocean and river. So this is ocean, this is river. And let's scroll a bit through the world. So this might be interesting, for example. So this is a nice large river biome. If we zoom in, we have quite a few chunks of river biome. But we have both a stronghold here and trial chambers. So let's see what else we can find. And don't rush this. This is kind of a crucial part, maybe the most important step of them all, because it will save a lot of work or create a lot of work if we do it wrong. Okay, so this one might be interesting. So here we have a nice river biome, and we could maybe have the perimeter with the corners somewhere here and here. And I don't see any mountains or stuff like that. And we could probably do it in a way that the trial chambers are not in the perimeter. Let's make sure that we don't hit the deep dark. So let's change the biome height to bottom. And this actually looks like a good spot. You see that we have these large deep dark biomes, so we want to avoid these. But this spot actually looks kind of okay. Let's see what we have: forest, savanna, jungle, mangrove swamp. So yeah, this looks kind of okay. Now let's figure out a rough area. So let's use pen and paper to write this down. So one corner, I don't want to have it in this ocean here. So one corner could be somewhere here maybe. So this is roughly 7,200 and 5,700. And now the height we would add 336. So we would have in the Z direction roughly 6,030. In the X direction we would go say 600 blocks, so we would be about 6,600. So the next step is to go back to the game and have a look at the area in game, of course. So what we need is plenty of rockets, we need a bed, we need obsidian and flint and steel. And I will go to the nether roof and just build a portal there in the area. And of course we are in a cave, because this is the river biome where we want to build our drone farm.
Squisher.
Okay, that's better. And now we can already mark on the map where we want to have our coordinates. So this would be the area for our perimeter. Now let's check it out. Fly around the area. Okay, so this might be a bit too far to the north. And this is a bit of a close call because of this river biome here. So I took a bit of time, checked out all four corners, and actually moved them a bit. So this corner was moved a bit down, a bit to the south. And this corner is now far enough away from this river biome here so that we have no water caves. I flew along the edges of the area and checked with FreeCran, and I don't think there are any trial chambers intersecting our trenches. And I made sure that the height is exactly 336 blocks. So this looks like a plan. I also removed the obsidian from the portal here that we generated under our river biome. And I think that's it. We have found our spot for our perimeter. Now all I need to do is to mark out 2 spots for the AFK spots for our 2 bots. And then we can go to step 3, create the schematics. So what can you do if you don't know the seed? Well, in this case, probably your only chance is to use Xero's map and explore a large part of the world like I did here, and just try to find good locations like so. So for example here, you could check out, this looks like a nice area for a perimeter maybe, and then just fly there and then use FreeCam to search for trial chambers and check that there's no deep dark there. It's a bit more work this way, but it's still doable. Alright, let's grab the schematics that we need. And this is Future Fruno. Now is the time to go to the Slimestone Discord and download the schematics that you need. And I have already prepared everything. So what you will need is the Fast Slim Trencher by Spindle and Desu, which will be a bootstrap trencher. You will need the Kronos Trencher collection, and these two are part of the Kronos Trencher collection. There is a channel trenchers where you will find them. Then we need the Euler World Eater, and you will have to grab the 272 by 272 version. And while you're at the Slimestone Discord, you can also grab the 1 overhead loop breaker by Cades, which will be the machine that we'll use to break bedrock. I will link all of these in the description, of course. And now let's create a little test world to get familiar with the trenchers, so that you have seen them before we build them in survival. Now what we need is a dry corner, anywhere. We will start with a little bootstrap trencher, and I've downloaded all of the schematics that I need. I will tell you about them in a moment. So first we TP to 80 blocks over our territory, and we start with the Fast Slim Trencher by Desu, which is just a bootstrap trencher really. So let's load the Lightmedica in, and this will give us the hole that we need to build the Kronos trencher in. So we will just build this, and to start and stop it, remove this redstone block here. And now this will make a small initial hole for us. This process is quite fast. Obviously you will need to babysit it, because if we encounter any liquids, water or lava, we will have to stop the trencher and remove the liquids.
Uh,